All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the FFL Solidity team call. Today is Thursday, June 22nd, 2023, and we are officially going into week 5 of June. But without further ado, super excited today. Each and every week, we truly do sit back and think, who have we had encounters with, endeavors with, or who have we seen out there really killing it, making changes and moving forward. And after the Connecticut Sales Conference, and also prior to that, we really were looking at Chris Loesche. Now, just to brag on Chris a little bit, he is a Hall of Fame producer off of a part-time basis, if I understand correctly. More recently retired from his job with the state, which is absolutely amazing, and I want to let him kind of dive more into that. But without further ado, guys, if you don't have a pen and paper, you're definitely going to want one for this call, as I would say structure, discipline, schedule is what Chris is all about. So, Chris, how are you doing today?
Doing good, guys. Thanks for having me. I'm in my car here. I'm always running. I never stop. So if you see people in my background or whatever, just notice that I'm in a Cumberland Farms parking lot. So
Hey, well, you know what? That's how you know you're doing it right when you're pulling over for team calls in the Cumberland Farms parking lot. I've definitely been there, Chris, so I appreciate you jumping on with us today. Just to kind of introduce the call, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you were doing before FFL, and what's kind of led you to where you are now.
sure. So I live in Wallingford, Connecticut, which is kind of right in the center of the state, halfway between Hartford and New Haven, for those that are familiar. I'm a busy guy. I have a wife, four children who are all deeply involved in their activities. They range from ages 8 to 15. So we're always kind of on the go. As far as FFL, I got involved back in August of 21. That was a time period where I was working full time for the state of Connecticut, and my oldest child, my daughter, she was accepted into a private boarding school that she really wanted to go to, but I realized that I couldn't afford it on a state worker salary, and I needed to figure something out. So that was March of 21, and then from March until about July, I figured out ways to make money. Right? I mean, I really wanted to send her to school. I didn't want to, as her dad, tell her no because she worked hard to get there. So what I did for a few months was I delivered packages for Amazon and Instacart and Uber and you name it, and I just thought of ways to save enough money to pay for her tuition. I did that until about July of 21, and then I honestly kind of got tired of it. But I knew I needed something flexible that would fit around my state job and my family schedule. So in July, August of 21, I started researching other ways to earn income in a flexible manner. And what I did was I ended up reaching out to Sean Mike. He used to work with me in the state of Connecticut. He was my supervisor. And I thought back to 2008, he had introduced life insurance to me, or the life insurance industry, and he tried to recruit me, and he asked me to join him. And at that point, we had an infant in the home, and I was pretty comfortable, and I told him no. But fast forward to the summer of 21, I reached out to him, and I'm like, Sean, what's this life insurance thing all about? And that phone call completely changed my life, my family's life. It's given me the ability now to retire from the state of Connecticut, 2 years later. So that's kind of how I got into it. When I spoke to Sean that day, he had told me, he goes, Chris, you do this job, and he knew my job with the state. So he's like, you do this job and you talk about these difficult things on a daily basis. He goes, this is just life insurance. You're just sitting with people discussing life insurance, and you're trying to help them in a different manner than you're helping families now. So he simplified it for me. And then he put me in contact with Eric Schmidt. That same day, I talked to Eric Schmidt from FFL Northeast, and I had a good discussion with him, and he explained the process to me, and as far as how do you get licensed, and finish your online course in 2 weeks, take your state exam, and then we'll talk. And that's what I did. I figured I needed to do something for my family, and I did not want to deliver groceries or packages anymore. And my goal coming into it was just, all right, let's try this and earn enough to pay for my daughter's tuition. I had no intention of leaving my state job at the time, so I came into it part time. My first week, I think, was mid-September 21. So I started halfway through the month, and I haven't looked back since.
I love that. And honestly, when I heard that story, from you speaking the other day, it really hit me because I looked at you and I was like, wow, this is a dad that really just wanted to truly provide the best for his family. And that's exactly what he's doing. And you didn't stop until you found it. And that really just says a lot about you, just generally speaking. And I love how you talked about the simplification. You were like, Sean just simplified it, right? If I'm working with the state now and I'm in situations I can truly only imagine, you can go out there and you can help people still, but through the manner of life insurance, you're just shooting them straight, which you're already shooting people straight. So it wasn't that big of a change in that regard. Now, in regards to kind of going now, also, you just retired from the state when?
June 8th was my last day.
Judy. So huge, huge, huge congratulations to you because what that says to me is quite a few things. First of all, that you've been there for some time and you left hopefully with something pretty good, but also that you started this, like you said, just to pay that tuition, but now you're far surpassed that, like way far surpassed that. And it's in such a short span that you did it. So I love to see, I think the sky's the limit for you, Chris. But really going through that part-time process, if you will, what breakthrough moment or what do you feel happened that you were like, you know what, like I could do this? Or like, do you just feel like you kind of woke up with that belief, if that makes sense?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, when I started mid-September, Eric kind of laid it out pretty simple for me too. He goes, "Listen, you buy leads, you dial them, you set appointments. If you're really not good at setting appointments, then you knock on their door. And if you just put in the activity, or a lot of people use that baseball analogy, get the at bats or plate appearances or whatever you want to say, because if you just do that, things are going to work out. Maybe you'll have a bad week, but over the course of a month, it's going to even out. Just you got to trust me in this." So that's what I did. I just followed that advice, and I was really bad on the phones at first. I couldn't keep people on the phone. I was trying to get too detailed with my script those first few weeks or months, and for me, I just realized I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to, in that first sentence, I'm going to remind them of what they did, whether it's an internet lead or a mailer or a 2-month-old final. Didn't matter. I'm going to remind them that they asked for help, and in that second sentence, I'm going to validate who I am. I'm the state licensed field underwriter assigned to you, right? I need to come out and see you. I'm in your neighborhood these 2 days. I'm assigned to you. So I wanted them to feel that they had no other option. I am their person and I'm coming to see them. So I kept it simple like that with my script, and I started getting better on the phones and setting more appointments. But really, that first week or two, I knew that this could be something. I thought it may have been a fluke that first week. I mean, I did pretty well. I didn't set a ton of appointments, but the people I sat with, I sold most of them, and I was able to help them, right, and help my family. So after that first week, I remember, talking to my wife, and I'm like, "Hey, honey, I invested this, and the return I had on that investment was like, multiply times 9." She goes, "Well, let's just see how next week goes." And then the next week, I kept up the activity and I did the same thing. So really, a couple weeks into it, I knew that I could probably go full time, but I was entrenched in the state at that point for 18 years, and I had a pension and benefits and all these fringe benefits, and it's hard to just cut ties with that, right? Because that pays your bills no matter what, right? And this was a little different for me because I knew I had to work in order to earn. But once I realized if I work hard, I can earn a lot more and do a lot more for my family. So I'd say like by October of 21, November, I knew I wanted to leave, but I just wasn't ready. It was a
Absolutely.
process.
Absolutely. And I think, Chris, you hit on so many different things that are so simple, right? And I think when folks overcomplicate this business, it's the biggest thing that's going to drive somebody out of the business or that whole paralysis by analysis. If Eric Schmidt had answered the phone that day and said, well, Chris, you got to go get licensed and your Series 63 and you got to learn how a mortgage is set up and exactly what happened. Like, no. Like you just needed the basic fundamental tools, like you said, like you needed a phone script and you needed your leads and you needed to do activity, right? And you said, when I pick up the phone, I'm just reminding them of what they did and I'm validating who I am and I'm letting them know I'm assigned to them. If we can keep it that simple on the phone, we're going to book more appointments. When we usually lose the appointments, Chris, is when we're like, and this and that, and oh, and by the way, well, no, I could do Tuesday at 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever's good for you guys. Yeah, no, you can get back. That's when we lose the appointment, right? But when we keep it super simple and structured, essentially, like this is what it is, right? I'm coming to your house. In your case, you're in the field. And that's what it's going to look like. It keeps you more grounded too, because you're not all over the place of like, what am I going to do? Or what do I need to know for today? So I love that you talk about really just like you kept it simple in the beginning. And you knew you could do it. There was no doubt of belief. But I also love how in the first week you were like, your wife said, hey, now let's see if we can do it again. Like it's a fluke, right? I absolutely love that because obviously, Chris, you went out and you did it again and again and again and again. And you hit Hall of Fame being part-time. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know anybody else that hit Hall of Fame being part-time? I don't,
Uh,
like off the
yeah,
top
I
of my
don't.
head. So like guys, like again, like let's take notes. Let's lean in here. And what were some of the non-negotiables, Chris, that you had to implement to make sure you were seeing success, not only for yourself, but for your family?
I would say just my schedule. I had to stick to it. If I was on vacation a week or, I knew I wasn't going to run for a few days, I would try to make up for that time period before and after, right? I knew I wanted to book 20 to 25 appointments a week being part-time. I mean, some people would say that's almost full-time. For me, that was part-time. And I stuck to my schedule. If I didn't book an appointment and I had a gap in my schedule, I would door knock. I would tell myself 3 door knocks equal 1 appointment, right? So if I'm in an area and I have a half hour, an hour gap, and I don't have that appointment set, I'm knocking on at least 3 doors. So it's
I
it's
love
it's really, I know we hear it a lot, but it's really just the activity and not swaying away from that.
Right. The non-negotiable, keep the schedule the way it is. This is what we're doing. If we're in the field, we're in the field. I think that that's important too. Like you just said, 3 door knocks is 1 appointment. So if you're out there and you're like, hey, maybe it's Thursday, maybe when you wrap up tonight at 9 o'clock, you're like, I don't have enough appointments. Guys, door knocking is huge. Like, Chris, would you say it's fair to say that you help a heck of a lot more families because you're willing to do things such as door knock that other people are not willing to do?
Yeah, 100%. I would say door knocking in that first 6 months was at least 25% of my business.
At least, right?
Hmm.
For sure. So guys, if you're not door knocking, and you're in the field, like get out there. You got to find different ways. And that was huge for me in the beginning too, especially you're getting better on the phones. One thing I found, Chris, was when I was door knocking and I was booking the appointment or going in the home and helping that family, what it did for me was it revalidated. I don't need to be, amazing on the phones my first month or two. I just need to be able to do the activity to get in front of people, right? So
100%.
love that. Um, and in terms of, mindset and belief, they can kind of coincide. Why is it important to make sure that you're speaking to people, who are feeding your business versus starving your business?
For me, like I think you need to hear. It's refreshing to hear other top producers fail. Not that you're rooting for that to happen, right? But so just kind of get, whether it's a text group or getting to the office or hanging out with the crew in person. I think that's important. Like for me in Connecticut, like Murphy and Freddie, I always talk to those guys and we bounce things off of each other. And it's helpful, right? I mean, there's always suggestions to be made and failures to be learned from. So I think just you know supporting or surrounding yourself with other people who have a positive mindset is really, and it's really going to help you. um you know and negativity is different from frustration, right? You don't want to surround yourself with negativity, but being frustrated is okay. I mean, we all on a maybe on a daily basis, or we all have our times of frustration, and venting's okay. That's a healthy thing. But being positive about it and not blaming others or your leads or your clients. I mean, when it comes down to it, when you fail, it's usually your fault, right? So I blame myself, and I'm pretty hard on myself, and I think that's helped me with my goals.
Absolutely. And when you take that self accountability, like when you walk out of that home and maybe you're not able to help that family, like every single time, Chris, it's not them, it's you, right?
Yeah.
Like I know for me, like I get out of an appointment, I hop off the phone, I'm getting off of a Zoom, whatever it is. If I wasn't able to help the family, guys, it wasn't anything that they did. It's what I did or didn't do. And when we can take that accountability, it helps us a heck of a lot in this business just to take accountability elsewhere. Because if you're not going to take accountability for not being able to help somebody out, like, are you going to be able to take accountability for your schedule? Are you going to be able to take accountability for, having to reset John, Mary, and Joe because, you woke up 3 hours late? Like, it helps just a lot for you to be able to take actual accountability. So I think that alone says a lot too. And then I love how you talks about text groups. I think that that's huge. Can feel like you're on an island in this business sometimes, whether you're in the field, you're doing, it doesn't matter how you're doing it. If you're doing it, you're probably not with the whole group of people every single day. So talking to people who are actually involved in doing the business, they can, like you said, frustration, sure, but negativity, We can be frustrated. We drove out 2 hours, sat with John and Mary. It didn't make sense why they had to think about it, but it's still our fault and we're looking for that solution. I'm not going to call Chris and be like, would you believe that no. It's Chris, I drove out 2 hours, man. I'm on my way back. I'm going to be doing some door knocks. I won't get home till probably 10 o'clock, but it is what it is. That's not negative. That's venting, right? And also just getting to an office. Like, guys, get to an office. If you've not been to an office yet and you're kind of just like scared, reach out to me, reach out to your upline. We'll introduce you to the person with the office closest to you. That way you feel good getting there and getting into the office. So that's extremely important. And now, Chris, we talk about this business being really predictable in terms of numbers. Talk to us a little bit about your lead spend, or lead type also versus kind of families helped, and how you've really understood your actual ROI based off of like activity, investment, sweat equity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, starting out, I was on mainly like instant internet leads, 1 month, 2 month final expense mailers. It was very difficult to get your hands on mortgage mailers, even if they were aged at that time. But what I did is every time an opportunity arose, I jumped on it. I knew if I can get a brand new mailer or brand new final expense campaign, that was going to help me because I didn't have a lot of time to dial. You got to remember, I had 4 children working for the state. My dial day was 1 day. So I knew if I could spend less time dialing and still book the same amount of appointments, it was going to work out. So yeah, I would say whenever you have an opportunity, say yes. You have to be able to a risk taker. If you're in your own business, you have to be able to risk a little bit. You have to be able to gamble on yourself a little bit. I think I said this at the conference. Gambling on a sports game or a football game, that's one thing. Your chances are like 50-50, right? Gambling on yourself, I think your chances are much higher because you control a game, right?
Right.
It's not the Bears or the Redskins or the Giants control, it's you controlling the game. So I think just saying yes and not being afraid to kind of jump on something new will take it a long way.
Absolutely. And I love how you talked about starting on instant internet leads and basically like being able to say yes, right? I think it's important to say yes, but it's also important to put yourself in that place that you're able to say yes, right? And what it sounds like to me, Chris, is you were like, I don't have time, period. Like, because I don't even have time outside of what's scheduled. That's what I have time for. So whatever I'm doing it. But if you could even take yourself back to some of those lead opportunities, and let's put you in your shoes today that you're retired with the state, would you still take on those same lead opportunities?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, 100%.
Would you say every single lead type you picked up, it's like you will turn an ROI like basically no matter what if you work the leads?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
100%. It's like, guys, you got to just get out there and work. Chris, like just told us, guys, Chris hit Hall of Fame, helped over 400 families last year, part-time, like, right? Part-time, 25 points. But like he said, just said he had 1 day to dial. So it's like, if you treated your business like that, it would essentially maybe help a lot of us. A lot of us say that we're full-time, Chris, but we're working a lot less than you were working when you had a full-time job with the state. That's not full-time, right? Like that's sometimes when I feel like, right? So I think it's important to also just be honest with yourself. Am I part-time, am I full-time, am I sometimes? But in terms of leads, guys, I cannot tell you that this has propelled me and other people on this call to different levels in the business Has it been scary to turn on different lead types? 100%. I would be lying to everybody on this call, including myself, if I said, oh, I've never ever got a lead type and been like, I hope this pans out. I mean, it's like, but at the end of the day, the other side of my brain says, Marisa, you know it's going to pan out because it pans out every single time. So, guys, if you have the opportunity to take on leads, especially if you're in a position where leads are not of the essence, so to say, there's way too many vendors out there right now that you should not, like, there's no reason that there shouldn't be reoccurring lead orders on. So, I love how you said that. And also, like, the analogy of the baseball or the football game, whatever game it is, in gambling, right? That 50-50 shot, if you will. Like you said, when you're doing this, guys, you're not putting $500 on, I was going to say David Ortiz. Like, that's like how much I know, right? But, you guys get my gist here. You're not putting 500 on David Ortiz. You're putting it on yourself. Like, do I bet that I can work hard enough to just be able to call these people, remind them who I am, remind them what they filled out, validate who I am, and let them know I've been assigned to them and go help them. Right? Of course you can. We can all do that. So with leads, guys, like Chris said, take those opportunities. It's going to really help you out in terms of trading time for money, money for time. We're always going to have a toss up on one of those, right? Now, being in home, Chris, why in home versus a virtual platform? And I guess, how do you feel like it serves you versus virtual? Now, guys, I want to be clear before I let Chris answer this. I am 100% not against a virtual platform. However, what I do believe is you're going to have to work a heck of a lot harder in the beginning to push that learning curve if you are doing virtual. So prepare yourself for that. But with that being said, Chris, talk to us a little bit about being in home versus kind of a virtual platform.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, in home is it's not the only option, but it's my number one option, right? For me, virtual is like a last resort. Have I sold policies and helped families virtually? Yes. Do I feel more comfortable in home? Yes. I think it's more personal. You can build trust. I think in the beginning, it's very important. If you can do it in person, you should. Um, for me, virtual is like if I have somebody who wants a virtual appointment, I'm not booking it during my prime appointment hours. I'm booking it when my kid's at practice and I'm sitting at a hockey rink, right? Or I'm booking it at 9:30 at night, or something like that, because I want those in-person hours for in-person appointments. I don't want to throw Zoom in the middle of the day. But that's me because again, one dial day and two full run days, two half. So I need to do it that way. But I think just whatever's comfortable for you, hybrid's fine. Some people have had success all virtual. I don't think I think I could do it if I had to, but I just love the in person. I don't mind driving. It gives me time to make phone calls and kind of debrief and listen to music and all that stuff. So the in person I think is really important. You pick up a lot of things in person. Like I sat with a woman this morning and I ask a lot of open-ended questions. I think I've learned that from my state social work job that if you ask open-ended questions, you'll get answers. And you'll find that there's always more than one sale in the home. Always, always, always. Ask about their grandkids. Tell me about your grandkids. Oh, I noticed a picture over there. Are those your kids? Tell me about them. Where do they live? And everything they're telling you, I'm keeping in the back of my mind for the end of the appointment, right? So you can't. It's tough to do that virtually. So the woman I met with this morning, it was an IUL policy, and we ended the appointment as, hey, these are my 4 grandkids. These are their dates of birth. These are my 3 daughters. These are their dates of birth. I think an IUL policy will be great for them too. I showed them my kids' policy. It's difficult to do that virtually. Yes, you could share your screen, but it's easier for me to slide my iPad over and say, hey, look what I did for my kids, by the way. You could lock them into an NLG IUL policy now at 2 weeks old. No, I didn't know that. I only knew that you could, do Gerber policies. Like, no, there's so much more out there that I use the line of, the wealthy have been doing these things for years. I didn't know about that. My parents didn't know about that, but now I'm in insurance. I like to share that. This is what I did for my kids. What do you think? And it's hard to do that in person, or you can't do that over the phone, so that's why I prefer the in person. I think you have more opportunities and, you could build that trust. It's more personal.
I love
That's
that.
me.
And I totally understand that. Again, being on kind of both sides of it, of the spectrum of, being in home for so long and now trying to almost be virtual and kind of in home. It's been a challenge, but at the same time, like you said, I think it's really important to understand your clientele. Who are you working with before you're just picking up the phone? It's like if all of us never met any of our friends in person, we only just called them their phone, like a lot of us wouldn't be like, we wouldn't be friends, right? Like, because we wouldn't understand where they're coming from. So I think a lot of it too, it's important to understand the type of people you're working with. I can imagine just like being a social worker, it's important that you know your audience. In this industry, it's important too that you know your audience. So I love that. And I love how you talked about asking open-ended questions because like you said, there really is always an opportunity for more than one policy in every single home. And what helps out with that too is we both know, Chris, if we go in and we help the husband, the wife, and their child, like their adult child, like that business is probably good staying on the books for life, right? Whereas if we go in, we one leg it, meaning that there's only one, like only John's home, not John and Mary, and we write John an app because we were like, you know what, we're gonna just get wing it anyways, which we should never do, by the way. We know there's a lot higher of a probability that that's going to fall off because you have one policy in there and you didn't even have both parties present. So I love the value you build when you're talking. You're just asking questions like, oh, tell me about the kids, tell me about the grandkids. And then you're actually showing them policies that you took out on your own children. And you're talking about like, this is what the wealthy have done in the past. I'm in the industry. I like to share that. And I think that that's really important because guys, a lot of us like still we don't understand the concept of I always say like I wish when I was a kid, Chris, that somebody got me an IUL. Like, you know what I mean? Like I wish that like, I'm like, where's mine? But guys, that's what we want. We want to make sure that that up and coming generation, like they're able to be like, well, like my dad got me one, right? Like Chris got his kids one, right? They're going to be able to say that. And using that as an example is huge, huge, huge. Because if you don't believe in what you're selling, it just doesn't make sense. And when you're doing it very nonchalant at the end like that, it doesn't probably feel like you're trying to be over abrasive with them and sell them. It seems more like you're just simply trying to help them because that is what you're trying to do, right? So I love that and that makes sense. And I was actually going to ask you, are you insured? And if you are insured, so you have your kids insured and you show those policies, same type of thing with your own insurance. Have you ever used that in the home as almost a tool to show somebody maybe in a similar age bracket as you, hey, this is what we got and this is what it looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. I always use myself or my family as an example,
Love it.
good or bad, good or bad. Like I lost my brother 8 years ago unexpectedly at 40, and I share that story when it's appropriate, when I think it's going to help the family understand how important the coverage may be to them, right? When you're talking about tax-free death benefits versus probate, and if I have somebody tell me, hey, I'll just put my money in a savings account, and I'll say, well, that's what my brother did, and guess what? He owed creditors at the end, and we didn't get anything. So I'll use that example, but I'll also use examples on myself or my kids, right? I'll show them the policy. I'll say, this is when my wife and I, when we bought our home 2 years ago, we had already had a term policy. We still have 15 years left in that, but we felt that it was time to have permanent coverage because not only do we want to have the mortgage protection, but we want to have that ability to transfer wealth to our kids, even beyond our mortgage, right? And as I'm saying this, I'm showing them an illustration. If it's an IUL situation, I'll say you could see you'll never pay in what it's going to pay out, right? Your investment's always going to be less than that death benefit paid out. Plus, you'll have access to this cash. So, sharing my own personal stories and of me or my family, I think it's helpful. I do it every time.
Absolutely. And they probably connect a lot easier with you. Like you said, you fill in an appropriate situation when it's needed, and they probably feel that sense of connection with you too. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Awesome. And then just to kind of wrap it up, couple last questions. What's one thing you do in every single home that has helped you a bunch kind of throughout your journey? Is there anything particular that is maybe duplicatable that you do in every single home and you're like, this has absolutely helped me?
I think I sort of touched on it, like sharing my own personal stuff. I mean, I'm not telling them like, my favorite color and all that stuff. It's relevant, right? But sharing stories, telling about my kids. I always show a picture of my kids, especially if they have children or grandchildren themselves. I think that's key. I'll say, hey, this is my crew, and I'll slide the phone over, and I'll say, you have pictures of your kids, and those kind of things. I think it just builds a connection. It builds a personal touch. You don't want it to be just transactional. You don't want people to see you as a salesperson. You want them to see you as a person who's willing to help them, right? So
Absolutely.
I think those things, just sharing personal stuff and asking the open-ended questions will I do that in every home.
Love it. So guys, asking open-ended questions and talking, not like Chris said. Chris isn't like, my favorite color is blue, and I really like to make sure I'm in bed by 10 o'clock. Like, that's not what he's saying, but he's saying, hey, being able to resonate and, hey, I love how you said, this is my crew, and you showed them the picture of you and the family. That, like, if you came in my house and did that, I would be like, well, what are we doing today, Chris? Like, because I would feel a sense of connection and a sense of humanism at the end of the day. We just want to know we're humans, and humans connecting with one another, trying to help each other out. And two last questions to wrap up. So what's one step everybody on this call could take today to be a better agent for themselves, and whatever text that means to you? Like, what's something everybody could get off this call today and say, if I do this, I might be a little bit better tomorrow?
I would say ask yourself if you're really that committed, right? Are you are
Mm.
you are you thinking about production? I like, for me, I have, when I was with my state job, I'd have my state job time, my family time, which is non-negotiable, and I have my work time. But during my work time, am I producing all the time? Whether that's meeting with families or being on the phone, or following up with carriers, or whatever. So I think a lot of us have more time than we think, and we like to do other things during that time rather than work, including me. I mean, I have moments of weakness too, where if I do that, I promise you, it ends up being a bad week. If I don't dial all day on Monday, or if I kind of get lazy with it, it hurts me. So ask yourself if you're really committed, if you're giving it your all, if you're taking the risk that, or you're jumping on the opportunities that you've had, right? Have you jumped on opportunities, or have you said no, right? Um, I just think those things, just kind of not deviating from that, your structure, your schedule, and your production will help you.
Absolutely. And I think that's a huge question that I actually wrote it down. I'm probably going to ask myself that every single day. Are you really that committed? Are you really that committed? And I think that, like you said, Chris, it's like, at that point, when you ask yourself that, you're going to answer yourself honestly internally. And from there, you got to backtrack whatever you got to fix. Or if you don't, if you're like, I am that committed, maybe you reinstilling that belief into your own mind is exactly what it needs to hear, right? Sometimes we just need to actually validate what we're saying to ourselves, because we can validate a lie as if it's true, and it will affect us as if it's true. But when we validate something about ourselves and we say, like, I am the kind of person that wakes up at 5 in the morning, I am the kind of person that goes to the gym, right? I am really committed because this is what I changed this week, and I am going to actually be full time. Or I'm not really that committed, so I'm going to probably just work 2 weeks in the month. Be clear with yourself, right? Whatever that goal is. So I love that. And just to wrap up, Chris, I know you're out there in the field in 2023. I know retiring with the state, that's huge. What are some of your goals to wrap this year up, whether that's personal, team, both?
Yeah, I mean, on a personal, like, well, going back 2 years, it's really hard to build a team when you're working another job. But my goal is now to do that. But on a personal level, I could do better, and I don't think I necessarily have to increase my lead cost. I think I could keep it the same, but I can work my leads more. And that's another question everybody should ask themselves: am I really working my leads? Am I calling them once and twice? Or if they're telling me to, screw off on the phone, am I throwing that lead out? I don't. I put it in my door knock folder, and I door knock them if I have the opportunity. So no lead is ever dead until I get a face to face now. Right.
Love it.
So, yeah, I mean, so yeah, so my goal is just to increase production, build a team, um, be more out there. I mean, I've avoided it for 2 years, because I didn't want to mess with my production, right? Because I was on a
Yeah.
very limited time schedule. I have a little more time now, and so I want to be out there more, conferences and convention, and on Zoom calls like this, and things of that nature, because I think I have a lot to offer, and if I can add value, then um, that makes me feel good, and it makes me feel good that I can help people. So those are my goals.
Absolutely. Love it.